This is SelfWork, and I'm Dr. Margaret Rutherford. At SelfWork, we'll discuss psychological and emotional issues common in today's world and what to do about them. I'm Dr. Margaret, and SelfWork is a podcast dedicated to you taking just a few minutes today for your own self-work. Hello and welcome back to SelfWork. I'm Dr. Margaret, and I'm so glad you're here. Before we get to the actual intro for this interview, I want to make sure you know that it focuses on suicide prevention, so please listen carefully. We have a great interview today. Maybe a little controversial, but I certainly hope not. I want to read you the first part of the email I sent to our guest today for SelfWork. Her name is Katrina Brees. Katrina, good morning. I'm the host of the SelfWork Podcast, and I just saw the CBS Sunday Morning interview about your mom, the way she died, and your actions since it happened. Let me say I'm so sorry about the struggles your mom had all her life and how her bipolar disorder could take her in such destructive directions, ending in her suicide. I've heard many stories and have my own concern and passion about how destructive perfectionism and suicide are linked, but that's not the point of this email. This morning, I'd sat down to write an episode on suicide, but I decided to switch on CBS's Sunday Morning and saw your interview. That's all the synergy I needed to find out how to reach out to you. I'd love to interview you for SelfWork. I very much admire what you're doing and think it's such a brilliant way of working through the complete mess that gun control conversations can create. It's positive, proactive, and I know many of my own clients would have signed up. That was my email. Now, who is Katrina Brees? She's a grieving daughter turned activist, and I think she's come up with a brilliant way of bridging the gun debate as well as the debate about the Second Amendment as far as it pertains to suicide. Her mother was named Donna, and it's called Donna's Law. And her mother, who hated guns and had often hospitalized herself because she was suicidal, killed herself with a gun. Here are some facts you may not know before you turn off. Hold on. Firearms are the most common means of suicide. In 2020, firearms were used in 53% of suicides. With 24,292 gun suicide victims annually, this is a leading cause of death for Americans. That's more than 66 people each day. Many suicide attempts are impulsive, and the vast majority of survivors do not keep trying until they succeed. But people who choose firearms as their suicide method very rarely survive. About 85% of gun suicide attempts end in death. Donna's Law, also known as the voluntary do not sell list, gives a person the option to voluntarily and confidentially put their own names into the federal background check system to prevent impulsive gun purchases for a suicide attempt. Donna Nathan should have been able to have suspended her own ability to buy a gun. And that's what we're talking about today. I think it's an incredible solution to a very sticky problem. Before we hear from Katrina, here's a quick message from Bioptimizer's Magnesium Breakthrough. Hey guys, I want to share with you that recently I've been working on some very important projects that have very short deadlines, as always, right? Seems everything today is ASAP. Anyway, I have not been able to keep up with all of my self-care routine. I certainly haven't had breaks to have proper meals, and I'm drinking way too much iced tea. I was starting to get really stressed out when I remembered that the Magnesium Breakthrough I take every night is also a great support for stress management. I'd kind of forgotten that. In fact, magnesium is responsible for over 300 body reactions, and Magnesium Breakthrough is the only magnesium formula that delivers all 7 different forms of magnesium. I didn't know there were 7 forms. One of them being feeling more calm, centered, and in control of our stress. If you're trying to balance life demands, give it a try. Trust me, your mind and your body will thank you for it. What you can do is visit magbreakthrough.com/selfwork and order now. Oh, in addition to the discount you get by using promo code SelfWork10, so that's different, SelfWork10, there are also amazing gifts with purchase. That's why I love shopping at Bioptimizers. Again, go to magbreakthrough.com/selfwork to get your Magnesium Breakthrough and find out this month's gift with purchase. Again, I want to stress Katrina's not talking about limiting gun sales to anyone but people who want to voluntarily say, I don't need to buy a gun. So I hope you'll listen to her story. She's passionate and she wants to save people like her mom. Katrina, can you tell SelfWork listeners about why you are, of course, about your mother, and then how you're using her death as a momentum for this incredible project and incredible legislation?
Sure. I'll start with what the legislation is. Donna's Law is a voluntary tool that people can use to prevent themselves from purchasing a gun. Mm-hmm. So it enables somebody to put themselves on a list that is confidential, reversible, and does not interfere with the Second Amendment in order to prevent an impulsive gun purchase in an episode of suicidality or for whatever other reason they want to prohibit themselves from guns, from a gun sale. And, I lost my mom in 2018 to an impulsive gun suicide. She picked up her phone and she typed in how to hang herself, and Google told her that the better idea would be to buy a handgun.
Yeah.
It then helped direct her to the closest gun store, where she essentially pressed go on her phone and was dead very shortly after that. She took it to the park and she shot herself. I had no idea at that time that it was that easy to buy a gun where we live. It is still shocking to me and completely uncomfortable that I live in a place where it is that easy and that fast to buy a gun. Even for somebody that has absolutely no training, no license, no waiting period.
Right.
She had been in psychiatric hospitalization 3 times before this.
She had gone voluntarily for those.
Correct.
Because she really wanted help and she knew she had bipolar disorder and she accepted that, and she was working with her doctors. And there were times when she was really well. She was doing great. She was managing bipolar disorder well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And our family really did everything, and she did everything, and she was very knowledgeable. Our family has many doctors in it. We were very supportive. We were on top of it every day.
Yeah.
My mom's partner, even during this episode that she was having, quit his job and stayed home all day long with her to supervise her. And it still wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. Because it was just minutes away from her being able to get a gun. And, so, immediately after this happened to my family, I was like, how could this be? Right. I talked to some lawyer friends that had guns, and I was like, how could my mom be sold a gun after she was in the psychiatric hospital? I thought that was impossible. And, everything about the gun sale was legal. And, at that point, I was just completely committed to changing that, and, used the massive tidal wave of energy that grief and trauma and shock. And I surfed that wave of energy into Donna's Law immediately. Within 24 hours of knowing about her death, I was having conversations with, the gun policy maker for Amnesty International, and we were conceiving this legislation. It was very immediate that I chose.
This is how you were grieving. This is how you.
Yeah, and I was scared too of other ways that I could get into to, I don't know, process that trauma. I've I have a lot of friends that have experienced trauma, and I've watched them after that make their lives worse in a lot of ways.
Yes, it can.
And having something like this happen, it was so obvious how I could make my life worse immediately to me. And
that happens a lot in a family. That happens with friends. That happens, in communities. There's certainly can I say my words this morning? There's certainly an acknowledgement, and a lot of research has gone into that people hear that someone died by suicide, and then they think, well, then I will. So
yeah,
the person who dies by suicide doesn't mean for that to happen. It's not an intentional act to try to create that dynamic, but it does create that dynamic.
Yes. I was shocked by how loud the voice to shoot myself was immediately after that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And I knew the gun store. The gun dealer's business card was left on my mom's passenger seat. I had so many fantasies of going over there and buying a gun and shooting myself. Mm-hmm. And pushing myself into doing Donna's Law brought into my life many survivors of similar tragedies. Mm-hmm. Like with Moms Demand Action, I mean, I felt like all of a sudden I had a million moms that wanted to.
Well, it also, for years, we've had a policy in place where people with gambling addictions can sign up at the casinos. Don't let me in the door. Mm-hmm. They're literally barring themselves from gambling, and it's something that they do voluntarily, and they do because they know it's a problem, and it's something about putting that hurdle in front of it. They can again renege on it and say, okay, I want to take my name off, but it's completely voluntary. And that's exactly what you're saying. One of the reasons why I live in a state where there are a lot of people. I live in Arkansas, and there are a lot of people that have guns. There are a lot of people, have guns all over the United States, but this is not about challenging that. It's about challenging the idea that so many firearms deaths are suicides. 60 to 65% of them, I think, are suicides. And we tend to think of the homicidal part of it, and we don't think of the suicidal part of it. So in essence, you're saying someone with major depression, or someone who literally has just gone through some trauma themselves and realize that's beginning to crop up in their thinking. They don't have to have a diagnosis of a mental illness. It's simply that they know they are in a bad place, and it is a prohibition for them. It's like alcoholics not going in a bar, I know I can't, I may not be able to resist that thought. And so I'm going to prohibit myself. I'm going to stop myself before I even get started.
Yeah, I wanted to add two things I've learned about the things you're talking about. Is one, in Pennsylvania right now, there is a bill to enable people to opt out of their ability to purchase alcohol from, I believe,
really?
a state liquor store.
Huh.
So this type of self-contract is sometimes called a Ulysses Pact. From Homer, the Odyssey, that he ties himself to the boat to avoid the songs of the sirens and is able to survive, I guess. I haven't read the book. And then the other thing I wanted to point out about the gambling one is everyone who has talked to me about being on the list of the gambling prohibition is also someone who's bipolar. And destroying one's finances is often something that can happen easily when someone is in a psychotic episode or in a mania. So people who know that there are times where they will make better decisions, and there will be times that they'll make worse decisions, I believe should be able to utilize these tools. And I hope there becomes more of them. I love the idea of someone being able to stop their ability to buy alcohol.
Yes.
I mean, what a beautiful tool that is.
Now, 3 states have passed Donna's Law, correct?
Yes, Virginia, Utah, and Washington.
Tell me about your mom.
She was very funny, and she was very smart, educated, worldly. She loved music and dance. She was so generous to everybody. She had a huge heart for any animal, whether it was a lizard or a human. If it was suffering, she would be the first to intervene and try and protect that creature. She had a lot of struggle with mental illness throughout her life and worked incredibly hard to protect herself from suicide, which made Donna's Law even more obvious because she really was an incredible advocate for her own mental health care. And so was I, and so was her partner. And there was a lot of strength in her care circle. She had recently had a step grandbaby that she was super excited about, and there was another one coming. And
I can see that's a very tender spot.
Yeah, like it's like I just know she didn't want to miss that.
And that's the thing. Somebody listening who doesn't know a lot about bipolar disorder or mental illness in general is that when those, I'll call them voices, or that energy or that impulsivity, when it is going on, you can completely lose sight of who you are at your most stable. It's almost as if there's a part of you that gets turned off. Did she have any psychotic episodes, or did she just have the bipolar disorder?
In the last year of her life, she had very obvious psychotic episodes.
Okay.
And things like hearing voices,
right,
and extreme paranoia.
Mostly when she was manic?
The end of her life, I guess it's like mixed state.
Okay.
She was pretty much in like a panic attack for 3 months, and she didn't sleep. And I would say insomnia played a big part in it. And, yeah, I mean, she wasn't really making any bad decisions. She was really just like in her house suffering.
Okay,
there were a lot of
fighting.
Yeah, there was a lot of physical things happening to her also, with the medications that they were trying on her. And she had very intense tremors, and her hands shook so bad that for the last several months of her life, she couldn't hold a fork because she would just stab her face. And she had to eat all her food with like her paw, just bringing it to her mouth. And she couldn't write very well because her hands were shaking, which made it even more offensive that a gun dealer would sell her a gun.
Right. It's impossible that she could have curbed all that and walked in and been looking much more normal. And obviously there were some things going on there that the gun dealer would have noticed. What has establishing this, let me ask you this. What are y'all doing currently? The bill has been introduced to Congress, but they have not done anything. Is that correct?
Well, they've done a lot, but it hasn't progressed.
Okay.
But they do invest a lot of resources that I appreciate, and there are offices there that are very busy working. So to say they've done nothing wouldn't be fair to the efforts.
Did you get a lot of feedback from your CBS interview? I bet you did.
Oh, yeah. And so positive. I mean, I didn't get anything negative. I mean, I probably got like 200 emails that were so supportive, and lots more like interviews like with you. And I love podcasting, so other podcasts and other news sources. And it's made me realize, like, a lot of people were like, I want to bring this to my state, which is amazing. But
well,
I did not.
How do people do that? That's what I was going to ask you next.
Well, that was the next piece of work I had to do. So I created a Donna's Law starter pack the last couple of weeks. And I've been creating all the templates and strategies for people to be able to do that in the most efficient, no cost way. And so essentially it just involves choosing who the potential sponsors in your state could be, which will most likely be someone who has already sponsored a suicide prevention bill. Look at also another option of who it could be is someone that's on the committee that will be determining whether this moves forward or not, because they have a stake in it and they have relationships with other people on that committee. So it's pretty fast to just identify a very small amount of people in a state and then just try to send them some of the letters that I've created templates for. And I feel like, excuse me, I feel like I've created something that someone can hopefully just put a couple of minutes into a couple times a month, and perhaps if the climate's right in their state, bring it forward.
How have you grieved your mom?
I don't have like another dead mom to compare it to. So
you're funny.
So I'm not sure what it's like otherwise, but I do feel like it's been an incredible privilege and opportunity to have the support of the media at very difficult times and moments in my grief. And a lot of those people, like you, are in the mental health field to me, and asking me specific questions that make me think and that lead my thinking into how I was able to use this to help me, and I think that one of the big things is not feeling shame.
That's right.
Not feeling like zero shame. Like, I have zero shame that my mom shot herself. I mean, I have a stack of shames, and this is not on the list.
It's not even in the list. It's not even what is that old fairy tale, The Princess and the Pea? It's not even the pea.
Right. So I assume that's beneficial. It's been amazing to see my mom's picture, like, being waved at Congress by representatives. And there's this part of all this that feels like my mom is kind of like an organ donor, like because like she gets to donate her story and her photo. And that is so valuable to legislation. She
is the person that she's Donna. I mean, her life and her death, the way she lived her life and then the way she killed herself is going to be honored. Is honored by this law. There's people's lives that she will save.
Yeah. And
you will save, by the way.
Thank you. And you will save as well. I think that another aspect of it is, like, when this first happened, I was dating this guy and he had this really great family. And one of my feelings, like, right away was like, oh my God, like, his family is going to think I'm, unstable. And,
right.
they're probably going to think that I'm going to do it. And now they know my mom is how she is. And I just felt like I can't let this be the end of my mom's story, because that doesn't feel good to me, for the end of her story to be that then she put a bullet in her head alone in a park. But having the end of her story be that then she became a law that empowered people with a tool for self-defense against one of the most common ways that people die in our country.
And the most lethal. The quote unquote best way to as Google told your mom.
And another way that it's really helped me is meeting amazing people that really care about this and are willing to talk about it, because I can't really be talking about gun suicide on dates and stuff all the time.
Yeah, well, now you know the world of a therapist. Some people go, can't you talk about something else?
Right.
Are you any fun?
Right. And I'm like, but this is inspiring and innovative. Another way that it's really helped me is meeting advocates of the bill that are bipolar people that have experienced suicidality and want to opt out of their ability to purchase a gun. And through meeting them, it's really helped me understand what my mom was going through. And it's given me so much more respect for her. And I regret that in her life, I thought that she should work harder to hold it together. Because now I realize that she was working as hard as she could. And that she was holding a lot together.
I think with any kind of chronic mental illness, that is a fight in and of itself, because it is the chronicity of it, and people watch you dealing with it, and they don't know how hard how hard it is to get out of bed, or how hard it is to control those impulses, or to deal with hearing voices. I mean, it's just, and that was her every day. And I think it's difficult for other people to understand. And so that you've gotten a firsthand account from these folks about, it is a huge job to control this kind of illness.
Yeah.
Or try to control it.
Yeah. And also, being able to say that my mom shot herself is something that was not allowed on the news 4 years ago.
Really?
And I have, I mean, even when I go on YouTube to watch my own interview on CBS Sunday Morning, it gives me 2 content warnings and a recommendation for the suicide helpline. Just because I want to watch my own interview. I mean, but I can see some horrific scene from the Ukraine war, and the media doesn't mind showing me that.
That's a great point.
But my mom deserves some of the credit for how this conversation has really opened up and given the country a way to talk about it that isn't so depressing and is kind of inspiring.
It's more than kind of inspiring. It is inspiring.
Thank you very much. So Donna's Law isn't just going to protect that 65% from suicide. It's also going to protect people from accidentally, or not accidentally, but in an episode to shoot somebody that they love. I mean, I was looking at data today about the percentage of men that shoot themselves after shooting their domestic partner. And it was, I can't remember the state, but it was 59%. And I thought about it. And one of the things I do in my work is I don't fight for gun control. I'm not fighting, and I'm definitely not fighting gun enthusiasts about it.
No.
I compassion for gun violence prevention. And that compassion starts with me compassioning for the other person if I expect them to compassion for me. And so I was looking at that data today about men who shoot their partner. And I thought, if I had just shot my partner, I would want to shoot myself. You know, like, what a sad thing. I mean, what an awful, horrific thing to experience, to shoot your partner. And I want to protect those people too.
Well, I'm thinking as you were talking about this, advocating for greater awareness and acceptance that this is what's happening. I have noticed, and again, I live in a pretty conservative state, but I have noticed that when more and more people who are dying by suicide, their families are choosing to include that in the obituary. Their families are including, they want that to be known. So how is this changing you as a person, Katrina? How is it
so much.
Your family? How's it?
It has changed my family. When I first started doing this work, my family, except for one person, showed me zero support about it.
Wow.
And it was years before I got real acknowledgement from my family of support on this work. And I was even told not to do this work by my family. I was told that what I was talking about was like nonsense.
Wow.
I think that there was a lot of fear.
Did that come from their own humiliation or their own shame, or?
I think it came from their fear of me putting my life on the line to discuss gun control in America.
I see. Right.
Impulsive gun suicide did not begin in my family with my mom. There were 4 other suicides in our family before my mom. That having my mom's death be in the newspaper, having me ask questions because reporters were asking questions, and learning about my own family history of suicide has really opened up the conversation. And I mean, our family for generations has been defined by suicide and been almost all parts of my family have experienced suicide. Like, people say, like, oh, was there bipolar on your mom's side? And it's like, no, but there's a ton of it on my dad's side.
Really? Wow.
So, like, it's like coming at me on both sides now. And it has really opened up the conversation from my family's elders that have experienced a lot of these losses. And also, how does my generation in our family protect each other? And, I mean, I still don't see a lot of my family, like, sharing my articles on social media or much like that, but they'll text me and, tell me that they're proud of it.
Good. I'm glad.
So it's evolving, and I'm going to keep going, and I assume that they're going to keep opening up about it. And I hope at some point they're going to be testifying in their states in front of their legislatures in support of this, because it's coming to their state soon.
You're going to make sure of that, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, it has been an honor talking with you, and I really appreciate this so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being able to share this knowledge with your listeners and with you. It's been a beautiful conversation.
Great. Thanks so much for listening in to SelfWork today. It's an honor for you to be here, and I so appreciate the fact that you are here and you give us your time. This week, you may notice a new sponsor of SelfWork. It's the Jordan Harbinger Show, and the ad is in a different format, what's called an intracast, so that you can listen to that information in just a couple of minutes. It'll be listed as the second episode in your podcast app. I found his show to be entertaining and intriguing, and I more than welcome his team to SelfWork. Please take very good care, as I say every episode, of yourself, your family, the people you care about, and your community. I'm Dr. Margaret, and this has been SelfWork.